They never settle for the usual. They do not spend their time on the forgotten, the helpless, or those who never challenge the status quo. No, they target you because you are different, because you're untouchable, because you are above their grasp. And that scares them. They send their finest, their strongest, and their most prepared, believing they can outperform what they don't comprehend. But they haven't realized they've already lost. You are not just another target. You're a force. They cannot identify a presence. They are unable to hold a reality that cannot be erased. They anticipated a struggle, opposition, and something they could smash. But instead, they discover the unshakable, unmoved, and unavoidable. Their weapons fail. Their plans collapse. Their confidence wavers, since this is more than simply survival. This is about fate. They come to shut you down and pull you into their world. Instead, they strolled right into yours. And once they enter, there is no going back. They felt they had control, until they learned they didn't. Some roads, once followed, have an indelible impact on the traveler. There are those who murmur warnings. However, the reality is already in motion. Leave a comment below. I exist in regions that people cannot see. When their tools fail, their words slip, and their carefully honed authority starts to crumble. They'll arrive. They enter, decked in symbols of authority, bearing directives that once subjugated others. Their voices, sharpened by decrees, reverberate with the confidence of those who have never questioned their supremacy. However, when they appear before you, something unravels. Defiance does not undo them. Neither does resistance shatter their base. It is the peaceful knowledge that their existence is an incursion into a domain not intended for them. Their words do not anchor their demands, nor do they force them elsewhere. Their presence would be final. However, they are perplexed by the lack of dread in this situation. They anticipate surrender, expect the natural order to shift, but instead, they falter. The more they press, the more they expose the hollowness of their hold and power. Absolute in other places means nothing here. They are invaders in a territory over which they have no claim. They have created dominance networks, hierarchical scaffolds, and sophisticated mechanisms to guarantee that everything remains inside their location. However, their reach does not extend to where you are standing. You were never a part of their machinery, not a creature under their control. They cannot break something they have never held. The horror they wanted to inspire starts to fold back on them. Their confidence fades. Their hands exhibit the smallest tremble. They came with the surety of conquerors, but now they're looking for something that's getting away from them. The power they imagined would mold the world bends away from them, leaving just your presence untouched. They've spent years developing definitions, eliminating what doesn't fit their pattern, and altering the story to suit their purposes. But now they depart with something unexpected. Your presence is inscribed in their reality. They came to devour, to rewrite, but instead they ensured that your name would live on long after they were gone. Even when they withdraw to familiar territory, convincing themselves they are still in charge, the reality remains. They never had influence over you, and each effort to undermine you will simply reinforce what they refuse to accept. You are beyond them. They assemble in force, confident that pressure bends everything and that enough weight would shatter even the strongest. However, you do not break every test. Improves rather than diminishes your presence. They mistake you for something deep inside their systems. Consider your rejection as a countermeasure to their authority. But resistance recognizes their existence, and you are not responding to them. You just are. You do not fight for space. You influence the terrain of the conflict just by appearing. The instant they try to impose their plan, they reveal the reality. You are never intended to be owned. Their goal of dominance simply emphasizes the hopelessness of triumph. You do not forecast their failure or reversal. It is merely an inevitability etched into the nature of things, rather than an omen or complete warning. The result is unaffected by their strategy. Their desperation merely confirms what was already apparent. The weight of inevitability descends before the first move is made. Space tightens, preparing for what is about to happen. There is no hesitancy or miscalculation, only utter knowledge that this moment was never in doubt. They don't progress as conquerors. They progress as a necessary demonstration of their own limits. Their appearance is not an assertion of superiority, but rather an acknowledgement of what they cannot comprehend. When the threshold is passed, the world stops obeying the familiar. Fear does not cause time to fracture. It also does not stretch in response to strain. It bends because you are beyond its grip. Every movement and change in the air is anticipated before it occurs. They charge forward, certain that their numbers matter and that their cooperation guarantees victory. But something isn't right. What should have been a crushing advance instead seems empty and stretched thin, like the echo of a fight lost before it ever started. Their power is an illusion. They are aggressive, a misdirected effort. They are not aware that they are already out of their depth. This is neither an invasion or a battle of wills. They did not push their way in. They had been devoured completely. The moment they try to control it, it is already beyond them. They are visitors in an environment where their rules do not apply. They are moving inside an invisible framework. If your heart is overflowing with God's blessings, now is the moment to express your love by clicking the super. Click the thank you button and donate $20 or more. You are not just supporting this platform. You are sowing seeds of faith that will impact countless lives. Your contribution reflects God's riches, a present that resonates beyond what you can see. Step into your mission. Be a receptacle for His grace. Give with trust and see His kingdom grow through you. You are meant for more. Their approach does not represent an assertion of authority. It's an acknowledgement of its vulnerability. They assume they are imposing force, but all they really do is demonstrate the limitations of their ability. Each demand, each act of hostility does not lessen what comes before them. It reveals the emptiness underlying their own strength. Their eyesight is limited, as is their perspective. They depend on tactics restricted to a single dimension. Yet the reality is beyond their grasp. Their ideas betray them before their deeds take shape. They use intimidation, but it only works on those who haven't looked through the curtain. They anticipate disobedience, but it is unneeded. When their very existence proves their loss, they do not interrupt. They validate. They want control. However, they find themselves in a situation that is already beyond their control. Their weaponry, their plans, their firm conviction in supremacy collapse beneath the weight of something they can't measure. They have based their existence on the concept of control, convinced that it is theirs to impose. However, control does not belong to them. It never did. And their rising anxiety stems from absence rather than opposition. The lack of anxiety, strife, and everything that they see as resistance. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 4610. A home constructed on rock does not quake while a storm rages. It does not collapse under the weight of the flood and does not move when the winds blow on it. It survives not because of its walls or its strength, but because of what it is built upon. That's you. That is why they can't break you. They bring their battering hammers, power, and threats, certain that they will shake your foundation. But they don't realize what they're up against. They approach anticipating pandemonium, anticipating terror. Expect resistance. They have seen this pattern previously. Push hard enough, apply enough pressure, and everything crumbles. But they don't discover anything to break. They detect no flaws or uncertainty. There is no space for their forces to dwell. They go onward. Nonetheless, they have already lost their words. Sharp and practiced. Fail before they take hold. Their moves were rehearsed and accurate. Do not land properly. They stretch out, but their hands don't grip anything. They stroll with the confidence of men who feel they can create reality. However, reality is not theirs to command. This was never about their strength. It was always about their failures. They assume they are in charge, that their presence alone determines the result. However, you do not play by their rules. You do not confront them with resistance. Don't rush to defend yourself. You don't argue because there's nothing to fight about. This moment has already been written, already decided. It is already unfolding. It worked just as it should have. Every power that rises against you was always destined to rise. Every effort to impose authority has previously been addressed. They do not appear as conquerors. They serve as proof. Their assault is not evidence of your weakness. This is evidence of their dread. Even if you were nothing, they would have disregarded you. If you were helpless, they would not have come. But they arrived. They came and disclosed the truth. But what you hold and stand on is beyond their grasp. They cannot remove, break, or rewrite it. They can only watch as their confidence dwindles. Some hesitate, falter, and change. Their position became confused of where they stood. They don't know why, but they can sense it. The weight of an invisible object crushing on them. Not an assault, but an awareness. Their trust is shaken not because of what you accomplish, but because of who you are. They anticipated resistance, rebellion, and something to smash. But they only discover existence, which cannot be eradicated. They don't know what they've stepped into. Not yet, but they will. When their hands quiver even after they have departed. When their brains repeat this moment, seeking for the thing that tore them apart, they will realize they were never in control here. They arrived assuming they were the storm. But you're the rock. This is not just a location. It is a concept beyond their understanding. They have no control over this vast area. It is not bounded by limits or walls, nor is it surrounded by locks or gates, but is woven into the very fabric of knowledge. They believe in stealth, ambush, and the power of overwhelming force. But it doesn't matter. The war is decided before it starts. Their plans are limited by the scope of their comprehension, but yours are based on something they cannot fathom. Preparation is not desperation. It is dominance. Leave a comment. I don't respond. I decide if your presence is sufficient to alter the land underneath them. Then their approach fades into obscurity before it can be implemented. They aren't imposing control. They are functioning as part of a larger orchestration. Every action, every strategy they use is not disobedience. This is a confirmation. They are not defying destiny. They are just entering a pre-existing system. The trap they try to create has already closed around them. Its form was finished the minute they made their decision. They never posed a significant danger. They were only the manifestation of what was already predetermined. Fear is for those who don't yet comprehend. For those who think, unpredictability determines the result. But this is not a life determined by luck. It's one of precision. Their involvement is not a hindrance. It is the predicted succession in an unfolding pattern. Every obstacle only strengthens. Every disturbance amplifies the previous one. They assume they are exposing flaws, but all they really disclose are their own. They are not measuring your resilience. You're judging theirs. They fail every time. There is no retreat, no hesitancy, and no need to rush to reply. You do not work inside their framework. They reside inside yours. They are not the architects of your demise. They were never intended to succeed. Their efforts to undermine you reveal the core reality. They can't understand you. And because they can't, they will never defeat you. What looks to be familiar fooled them. The structure seems conventional, substantial, defined, and uninteresting. However, the moment they cross the invisible boundary, something undetectable changes. They are unable to occupy the available area. It doesn't recognize their existence. Their steps are sluggish. Their assurance wanes. The air bears an unsaid, resistive message. Something prevents them from settling. They felt that entrance equaled ownership of the space, which would bend it to their will. But they were mistaken. They've stumbled into something more older than they realize. Their instincts cling to something beyond their grasp, fashioned with design. A quiet warning hidden behind their own hubris. Some plow ahead, refusing to face the developing dissonance. Others hesitate, caught with the silent understanding that nothing works as it should. They depend on force. However, force has no grip here. The foundation does not just stand. It rejects them. The stillness isn't empty. It denies them. Their words seem muffled. Their orders lose weight. The space does not wait for them to react. It changes around them, distorting their aggressiveness and undermining their control. They expected opposition. Confrontation is something physical to overcome. However, they are not greeted with defiance. They are confronted with something larger. Some falter, eyes flashing toward exits they didn't want to use. Others move, but not on purpose. They came carrying their cohesiveness breaks. Their assurance fades. They felt they were entering a place. Instead, they encountered something unfathomable, unaffected by their design. Their regulations don't apply. Their will cannot mold something that does not recognize them. They travel further. However, as they progress, their understanding decreases. What they carry has no weight. Their directives spread like dust. They cannot see in the current. They did not plan for this. They never could. They don't understand what is going on. But their bodies do. They go before their brains can process. Why? What was meant to be a display of power devolves into something else. Something unsaid but absolute. This isn't fear. It is deeper and more sinister. Disruption of core assumptions. They moved in with their voices, losing their edge and slowing their emotions, not through control, but due to something invisible pushing upon them. Some people report feeling pressure in the air. An invisible mass becomes thicker with each breath. Others hear it. Not sound, but absence. A quiet so intense that it eats each syllable before it emerges. Their existence here is not resisted with force. It is naturally unwanted. Some people stand at the entryway, refusing to cross farther, recognizing that what is ahead is not intended for them. Those who go further find their assurance fade. Their instruments fail. Rejection, rather than harm. Their cameras refuse to record their signals, which distorted their transmissions and caused them to fail before reaching their targets. Their technology works properly. It refuses to recognize them. Their control systems don't fail. They cease to exist in this space. The more they attempt to force their will, the more it disintegrates. They have no authority here. What they comprehend is not applicable. And when their own presence unravels, they understand the area they attempted to penetrate was never theirs to inhabit. What they walk into isn't empty. It doesn't yield, does not comply, doesn't acknowledge them. Their technology has no relevance in this context. Their hierarchies become irrelevant. They are groping for something invisible, just out of reach. This is neither a building, nor is it just the junction of walls and spaces. It is a presence, a witness to time itself, connected to a power beyond human comprehension. The earth underneath them doesn't just exist. It recalls that the air resists them not with force, but because it knows they have not entered a space. They've trespassed into something cognizant. They give directives, yet their words have no weight. They seek control, but the fundamental fabric of the land opposes their intentions. Some experience it as a weight pushing on their heads, causing a distortion at the periphery of their vision. Others feel it in their pulse, irregular and uncomfortable, as if something invisible is observing them silently. Some stagger away, shocked and unable to explain what happened to them. They return to their realm. However, a ghost of this location remains, snaking around the borders of their imaginations. They will justify it, dismissing it as an aberration, a mistake, or a brief period of anxiety. But deep down, they know the truth. They were not just onlookers. They were cautioned, and warnings are never issued without reason. They believe they are the ones learning, analyzing, and dissecting. However, every action, every pause, and every breath taken between their sentences has already been read. They assume they can see perfectly, but they are the ones who have been exposed. They arrived expecting resistance, anticipating terror, preparing for antagonism. Instead, they find themselves dissolving. Their thoughts betray them before they can speak. Their confidence fades before they act. Some cling to the illusion of power, believing that repetition would restore control. Others hesitate. They are burdened with an unconscious sense that this land does not belong to them. The distance between them and their desired outcome is not empty. It hums, charged with something beyond their grasp. The more they press, the more it pushes back. They intend to pass judgment. However, they are the ones being weighed. Some experience it as a subtle but rising discomfort, a lack of control that they cannot understand. Others realize too late that their being here was never their own choice. They are not the creators of this moment. They are just components being moved in a framework vastly larger than their own. Their presence alone determines their destiny. Regret, stinging and strange, sinks into their bones. What they do here will last. What they try will not be forgotten. They may leave this spot, but the effects are already in action. The equilibrium will change. The tables will turn. Those who go unfettered will falter. The voices that previously commanded will shatter, and those who impose the rule will face consequences. Some will deny. Others will seek to flee. But it won't matter. There is no avoiding the weight of what has been put in motion. The cycle has already started. They arrive anticipating chaos, weakness, and the predictable unraveling that follows their march. But nothing breaks or stirs. They pushed, but nothing gives way. Motion is all around you. Voices clash. Tension coils. However, it does not reach you. They have learned how to use pressure to obtain acquiescence. However, they face no effort to subdue, no opposition to overwhelm. They are greeted not with resistance, but with something far more disturbing. Absolute stillness. You do not adapt to their presence. Do not submit to their authority. Don't recognize the weight. They try to impress their urgency by increasing their demands, sharpening the air, and remaining thick with something they can't identify. They cannot comprehend power that does not exert itself externally. They anticipate a fight, a response, or something to tear apart. However, they discover nothing to demolish. Every syllable they utter fades into insignificance before it hits. Their confidence, previously unshaken, starts to weaken, not because of what is done to them, but because of what they are unable to do. Their directives fail, and their confidence wanes. Their mission loses momentum. Their presence was intended to disturb, yet they are now the ones unraveling. They strive to re-establish themselves in order to retake control, yet control has no value when it was never conferred. The quiet does not yield. It exposes the weight in the air, but does not surrender. It shows that force was intended to be used to elicit a reaction, but it instead turns inward, crushing against them. The anxiety people experience stems from what they fail to influence rather than what they perceive. Their authority was always external, a framework based on obedience. However, obedience does not exist here. They understand it's too late. The people they hope to conquer do not resist because they do not have to. Their presence alone is sufficient. Some people pause, increasing their hold on the appearance of power. Others look at each other, waiting for confirmation that never comes. They walk in with power and then go, uncertain. They were expecting to identify a flaw. However, their own hands tremble. They intended to establish order, but their own thoughts spiraled. They arrived to impose authority, but left without it. They don't know how to explain it. This stillness does not enable them to stay unaltered, but they will remember long after they are gone, long after they have tried to justify the schism in their confidence. The weight of their failure is still inscribed in the fabric of this moment. They came to obliterate, deconstruct, and impose their will. But in doing so, they verified what they were attempting to deny. This was never merely an operation or an expression of power. It was an affirmation of your importance. They do not spend time and effort on things that are unimportant. They don't attack at shadows. Their assault is not evidence of your weakness. This is evidence of their dread. If you were unimportant, they would have ignored you. If you were helpless, they would not have come. But they arrived. In so acting, they betrayed the truth. You are beyond their power. They imagined they could reduce you and deprive you of presence. Maintain silence. However, with each demand and effort to restrict, they guaranteed that your reach grew even wider. They believe that power contracts under strain. However, genuine strength does not bow. It amplifies every assault against you and just strengthens your presence. Every attempt to eliminate you just feeds what cannot be contained. They believed they were severing, but they were only anchoring. What they misunderstood for the end was the start of something far bigger. They depart believing they have triumphed, yet their victory is empty. Their own power exacerbated the same phenomenon they tried to halt. What they attempted to diminish has become evident. What they wanted to obliterate has become permanent. They came with their directions, tactics, and well-planned infiltration, but their power crumbled. When they crossed the boundary, what they thought to be a show of authority transformed into an unexpected revelation of their own limits. They entered into something that had been created long before they arrived. A series is already written. They were playing a game without realizing it. The walls stood firm. The quiet did not tremble. And in the silence, their own reflection appeared, twisted and inevitable. They believed they were in charge. Instead, they became the subjects of study. Their gadgets turned against them, not by sabotage, but via disclosure. Their own monitoring folded in on itself, providing them only evidence of their own inspection. Their playbook was not reversed. It was laid naked. This wasn't disobedience. This was a reckoning. The illusion of control crumbled under the weight of something they were unprepared for. The understanding that their techniques are not unknown, that their existence is not uncontested, and that their reach is not limitless. The more they try to control the truth, the more it expands beyond them. The echoes of this will not vanish. This is not merely an event. It breaks the illusion of their invulnerability, and the pattern is apparent to those who have seen it, especially those who have stood in the heart of their encroachment. The system isn't as secure as it thinks, and those who considered themselves enforcers would soon realize they were never actually in charge.